Sorry, the number you have reached is not in service. Please check the number or try your call again. This is a recording.
Okay, so 10 seconds into this interview, before I started recording, Frank was being Frank, and he was already off on a story and an amazing recap of something. But I'm jumping the gun, and I'm going to start this interview in a strange way by telling you and reminding you once again, by the way, people, this is Frank Jackson, the photographer. You don't fit in, and you've never fit in. And we're going to talk about that, but I just wanted to remind you before we get started, I don't see you fitting in anytime soon to the photography world, which is why one of the reasons I find you so interesting. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I've got some quick questions for you, Frank, to get you warmed up.
Okay.
Window or aisle?
Aisle.
Yes, same with me. Tri-X or HP5?
Oh, it's got to be Kodak. Yeah, it's got to be Kodak. I mean, I'm a T-Max guy, but
Okay.
if I have to pick between HP5 and T-Max, I mean HP5 and a Kodak film, black and white film,
Yeah.
because nobody does grain like they do.
Yes. All right.
Nobody.
What is a worse violation? Vaseline on the lens or a zoom blur?
Oh, it's got to be a zoom blur. Yeah.
Okay. You're trapped on an island rest of your life, but you can invite one person.
Oh man.
I have no idea who I would pick, by the way.
I would actually, when I was younger, it would have been, it's got to be some kind of woman. But now I'm older, it would be someone who could be there and not be there, and that would be you.
Oh, I mean, you know what kind of trouble we would get in if it was the two of us on an island forever. And the last quick question: coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Yeah,
Coffee.
meticulously made coffee, I will say, if it's based on the paraphernalia in your house.
Yeah, I'd build a cup of coffee. I'd build a cup of coffee like someone processes film. You got to maintain your temperatures. And
That's so good.
Even if it's a pour over, it's still the process, So yeah.
Yeah, no, I've never seen paraphernalia like at your house that's coffee based. I've seen people with a problem, but not quite that level, that extent of problem. But so I said something earlier, kind of joking, but I wasn't joking. And it's something that you and I've talked about a million times over the years, which is you don't really fit in the modern photo industry. I look at you and I'm like, okay, he's not a guy that's out shooting commercial advertising, assignments all the time. And you're also not a social media darling. Your work is very different. It's quiet, it's thoughtful, it's introspective, but there tends to be a message on the back end. How do you describe what you do?
I was asked a long time ago. There was a show that the California Afro-American Museum put in called Intersections, and it was groundbreaking because what they did was they picked black photographers because it was going to be shot in South Central, and they had photos in different places in South Central from turn of the century. And each one of us, and so I was the last one picked. And I was told a story about how I got picked. Once again, not fitting in. They got everyone, and AAA funded. AAA. They have deep pockets. And when they fund an art thing, they don't play. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on this thing easily. And they paid us very well to be there. So the guy that called me was their art historian. He ended up getting a PhD. And Matt goes, I asked them, is there anyone else? Because we had 8 people in the room. And several of them said, get Frank Jackson. And they all got this funny look on their faces. Said, get Frank, call Frank. And he said, I was curious as to why. And we started the conversation that day. And we are, number one, super tight friends to this day. I've always been an oddball. It never really bothered me, but I had this kind of an unegotistical, you'll see, one day you'll see, you know.
Yeah. It's that quiet intensity that when you know you're onto something good or you're making good stuff, but it may or may not have been recognized. And you always, I think it's a good lesson for photographers in general. Going into the professional field, you're going to run into people constantly who are like, nope, don't like you, don't want you, don't like your work, or this is good or whatever. And you can fold up and go home, or you can sort of take the mentality that you had is you'll see. I think there's also like maybe an aspect even one bit further that some people get vindictive about it, and they're like, F you, I'm going to come back and prove you wrong. And I think that's made a lot of great photographers. I think that rejection and how people take it has lit a fire under a lot of people to get them out there and get them fired up. And it's not just, photographers. I'm reading a book about Marie Colvin, the war correspondent, right now. And, she had a heck of a time getting started in the journalism world. She just couldn't catch a break, and then finally ended up working for the state of New Jersey doing a newsletter, and then went on to become like one of the most famous female war correspondents of all time. So you'll see.
So to finish the question, the show, I was the only one shooting film because, it was 2006, this thing jumped off. So
okay.
I didn't have any money for a big time digital camera. And, a lot of these other guys were full-time working pros. So they were, Canoned out, Nikoned out. And I was still shooting my Hasselblad. I had an X-Pan and my trusty square, and of course, I walked around with the square on my shoulder like people walk around with a parrot, like a pirate walks around with a parrot. So, and I didn't have a car because I was coming off a major illness. I had stopped driving. So I had to be driven around to my sites to shoot. And so we did the show. I ended up getting more assignments than everybody else. They really liked my aesthetic because I was shooting at night too. I went out and shot at night, which is something nobody else was doing. And I took Matt with me, who was, from AAA, and he was really blown away by seeing old-fashioned kind of work.
Yeah.
So we got interviewed on Channel 4, and the guy said, how do you come up with this stuff? Because he saw some of my other work. And I said, being a photographer, you document or you collect things. So what you collect is moments, visual moments. And I said, I'm actively collecting visual moments, and I'm happy to become the sum of my moments. And, you never stop collecting. And, some moments are better than others. Everything I do isn't wonderful. Everybody, some people like some stuff I've done, and I go, you like that? Really? We talked about.
It's impossible to figure out. I just did a film a couple of days ago about a project that I did that I thought was silly and simple, and people read some sort of political bend into it, and there was nothing I could do to convince them that was not the reason I did the project. They just took it from that and ran with it on their own. And someone asked me if that had happened a lot, and I said no, didn't happen a lot. It happened with that one story in particular, but I can't stop what people are going to interpret about, that bring to their own baggage to a story. So it happens.
You're the candidate for president in 2024, and you didn't even know how you got there.
Hey, tell me, speaking about how you got there, I don't know if I've ever talked to you about this, but where did you grow up?
I was born in Florida, 1956. Jim Crow was, still normal. It was normal.
Yep.
We knew our place. That's how you got along. You knew your place. You knew that whatever city you were in, you knew what parts of town you didn't go to. You knew at night that there were places you just weren't out on the street. It was just normal. And Jacksonville was cities close to the coast were not so hardcore. I remember when my parents finally moved from Florida in '59. We moved to California, and every time we went back to go to Florida, we would not drive through Mississippi because as you go to Arizona and into Texas, Jim Crow, the beak starts showing up on the bird, you know. The bathroom, you started getting that other key to that bathroom that was behind the gas station. And then you stopped getting served at restaurants. And, people, it's funny, people, America has never come clean about any of this. This is just hilarious. And Black people, as a race of people, we're not angry. We get raised. Our parents taught us how to survive. They said, look, if the man stops you, you do what he says. Just like you don't talk back to us, you don't talk back to them. You don't get second chances.
What did your parents think of your creative bend?
It was really funny. I didn't get any pushback about, oh no, you don't want to do that. I didn't get any push up or push back.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really funny because I remember I got my first professional photo job in New York City. I was 19 and I ended up working for the city, and I was in heaven. You would talk about, oh man, I was all over the city. They said, hey, we got your transportation for you. And they handed me a canvas bag full of subway tokens. It had to be about
nice.
Subway tokens. And I was like, yes. So, I went to New York with an old Hasselblad, an old Olympus OM1. And I left New York with a Leica M5 and a 90 millimeter lens because the store didn't have any other lens for the camera when I bought it. I learned to shoot. That's the only camera I had for the next 2 years.
An M5.
M5, the first camera with a meter, and a 90 millimeter f2 Summicron. So it looked like a rhinoceros.
So for those of you out there, the Leica M5 is the Tartan Prancer of the Leica lineup. And if you don't know what the Tartan Prancer is, you need to look it up on YouTube. That's what it is. It's an atypical beast. And the 90 millimeter is not an easy lens to shoot with on a Leica body, in my opinion. That's a tough combo to be stuck with for 2 years.
And I learned, and I was doing jobs with this. I was doing group shots. I just back up. I went way down the street to shoot. I didn't, and then eventually I got some money. I bought a 35 millimeter, used 35 millimeter.
There we go.
But, and then the next camera I bought was a Nikon FM. They came out with the FM. Bought an FM, still had the Leica. And then I got rid of the M5. And Leica was trying to come back from almost going out of business. Yeah. And they came with M4 II, which, it was like, why didn't you just keep making M4s? Why are you making M4 II?
And that was Canadian made, I think.
Yeah. Well, you know what it was? They built a factory in Canada and shipped all the Germans over. They did that for tax purposes.
It's Canada. Everybody loves Canada.
It worked very well, So then I bought M4Ps.
Yeah.
Bought 2 M4Ps. And I had a motor winder for one, and I had a 28, a 50 Summicron, and the new 90 Summicron. And those were my 35 millimeter cameras. And then I had a 4x5 Sinar, taught myself large format. And, I had, by this time I had a regular job.
Uh-oh. So what was the regular job?
Working job. I was actually, well, let me backtrack. So came here from New York after the job right out in New York, came to LA in New York, and was working at Sears part-time. My father was working at IBM. He was a big executive at IBM, and he goes, hey, IBM's hiring again. I can get you an interview, but I can't get you hired. And I said, what can I do for IBM? He goes, well, you have a high mechanical aptitude. I've seen you tear stuff apart and put it back together again. I said, oh, okay. So I took the interview. I couldn't tell him no. I mean, he went all this way to do this.
Yeah.
So they hand you, they go, pulls a stopwatch out and he goes, see this? I go, yeah, it's getting gears on you. And he goes, I want you to look at this thing. And when you're done with it, you say, go. I'm going to click the stopwatch and you tell me what's wrong with one of them. on this thing. And so
Ooh.
I looked at it and I said, okay. I took about a minute and he goes, click. And I go, that thing there is not on. He goes, oh. And he picked up this hook, looked like a probe that a dentist would use. And he said, this is called a spring hook. And all customer engineers, that's what we call people that repair IBM equipment, become very familiar with these. He handed it to me and goes, fix it. I fixed it. And he goes, we're going to be calling you. I said, I didn't believe him. You know, 6 months later, they called me. And I went through 6 months of intense training on all their typewriters, move the ball.
Wow.
Fix these things blindfolded, like you just feel stripping an M1 while you're getting fired at, you know, in a hot zone, and dictation equipment. And man, I was making real money, so I bought more cameras.
Yeah, your side gig fed the main gig.
And I got that's how I got the Sinar. I got rid of the Omega 4x5. I bought a Sinar F camera, you know, and lenses for it, and I bought a complete dark room. That's where I got the rest of the Leica stuff.
Now wait a second. So you got your IBM gig, and then you've got your photography on the side, but it's really the IBM gig is there to feed the photography obsession.
And I really stopped shooting a lot too, so I was just working at IBM more than anything else.
Yeah, that's my question is when you go to do a project, whether it was back then or today, how are you finding, why do you choose the subject matter you do? Because it's not a typical thing. It's like you don't go out and say, I'm going to go do a project on the LA River. I'm going to go do this and that. The projects are really different. How were you deciding back then when you did get time to shoot what you were going to photograph?
Well, I was training myself to understand why I was able to take pictures and they came out, because I could just do that and they always came out, and I just used to frustrate me. It scared me. I said, I don't want to wake up one day and not be able to do this. So I would take an egg and set it in a window, and I'd look at how the light changes on the egg, and I'd photograph it different times a day until my film and the egg looked exactly like when I made a print. The ultimate egg picture, which you've seen, is the floating egg shot I did in 1991.
Yep.
That's all complete controlled. No photo. There's no Photoshop. People to this day think that, you know, oh, you photoshopped it. No, not Photoshop. How many times did you drop that egg? Never to drop. No, wasn't dropped. I, after almost 4 years at IBM, I suddenly realized I like working on stuff, but I didn't love it. And I love photography. I was like, so I started thinking, I gotta quit this job. And I kind of thought about my dad. I mean, you know, my father wasn't gonna, I was thinking, hey, he might not like that, but he couldn't stop me, you know. And so I went to my boss and I said, first I called one of the old guys who'd been there for 10 years. And I said, how long have you been here? He got this look on his face. He looked like he ate something he didn't like. And I said, I never want to have a look on my face like that. I said, I'm quitting. And he said, you what? I said, I'm quitting. He goes, really? I said, yeah. I said, I'm done. I'm gonna give my 2 weeks notice. So I went back to the office and I told my boss, I said, hey man, I'm giving you my 2 weeks notice. He said, he did that Roger Rabbit, blah, 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 what? You know? And I said, hey man, I'm not happy. And you know, I said, this job is, you work in the field and then you promote into an office behind a desk, and you promote behind desk. And I said, my father is very good at that. My father was a top executive at IBM. He was very good at that. Mm-hmm. He was one of the guys he was a headhunter that would save jobs. They just didn't even fix a problem in an office. He saved jobs. He didn't fire people. He'd go in and get people to work together. They loved him for that. And, you know, that was his thing. My thing was, I draw with a camera. I don't take pictures with it. I use it because I can't draw. That's
so
basically, yeah.
Very similar. When I worked at Kodak for 4 years, Kodak Professional, got a company car, got benefits. They treated their employees really well. It was, I would say, a relatively easy job. That's probably when I first met you, is when I worked for Kodak in LA in the late 90s.
I got introduced to you. Yeah.
Yeah, but then I was in the same boat. I looked around and there were a lot of people who had been there for a long time who were never ever going to leave. And Kodak is such a legacy company, and to get a job at Kodak was such a big deal during the day. But I went into it knowing this is not a long-term solution for me. This is sort of a short-term thing. And the same exact thing happened when I called my boss and said, look, I'm going to leave. He was like, where are you? He goes, what do you mean? Like, when are you going to come back? And I was like, no, I'm going to quit and leave. And it was just this sense of like, dude, you got a company car. Like, yeah. And you got benefits. Yeah. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. It's just time to do something else. And again, I had a great time during the time I worked there and I learned a lot, but same thing. I got to do something else.
I remember the day I got introduced to you at Sammy's camera, and I looked at you and we talked for about 5 minutes, and I said, you ain't gonna be here long. You're gonna leave. They're not gonna get rid of you. I thought to myself, boy, if they're lucky, you'll stay. But I didn't see you staying there. No.
One of the funniest quotes that I've ever heard in my life, which was placed upon me by someone who I really like, was one of the people who interviewed me for that job. And she said, you're going to have a real problem here. And I said, what are you talking about? And she goes, you're way too creative to work here. And I just remember thinking, man, that's a weird statement coming from Kodak, someone at Kodak. And I also brought a portfolio to the interview. And she said, of all the years I've been at the company, I've never seen anyone bring a portfolio to a job interview at Kodak. And I thought, man, that's bizarre as well. But again, this person I ended up working with her for 4 years. She was amazing. But those two quotes like really sunk in.
Yeah. Also, I don't understand. Well, I've never understood camera companies that there's this thing going around with Leica and digital. Leica's kind of in a quandary because their cameras are racially expensive. Everybody can't afford them. They're trying to trade on their film camera legacy, and the camera was used by some phenomenal photographers.
Yep.
And they're trying to trade on that, but they're trying to make the new digital camera the star, which cracks me up. So they just announced the new M6, and apparently the advertising promotion has been a disaster because everybody's all over them because the pictures suck that they picked running the ad. And I said, Leica could have asked the boutique stores, who are your photographers that shoot film? We need to see. We want to ask them to send in stuff for us for the new M6 launch. And I just kind of go, it's hilarious. I saw an ad for Leica Academy for the people that own the M11 digital, and they get to take the class free. The picture they used for the ad was not a cool picture. It was a picture of the camera.
Yeah, of course. But here's the thing, Leica, I think by their admission, Leica will, I would imagine, and I don't know because I don't have any communication with Leica, but they'll tell you to your face, this is not a camera system for professional photographers, because professional photographers in many cases can't afford these cameras. These are for wealthy, advanced amateurs. And so Leica suffers, to me, from the same ills that all the rest of the camera companies do, some to greater extent than others, but they're playing the numbers game with people who have numbers. And Leica is diluted by following, like all the other brands are. If you have following, it doesn't matter who you are, how bad your images are. Yeah. It's like you can put asses in seats, the volume, the metrics and basically that's what all brands do now, is they run metrics on people. The interesting thing is that the metrics definitely are not based on high volume. And in fact, the higher the volume, in my opinion, the less likely brands are going to work with these people moving forward, because high volume people are high maintenance people. And also they're filled with bots and not real followers. And the more famous someone gets with numbers, the less likely they are to have an actual relationship with their audience. Yeah. And that's why you see micro influencers. But, Leica you build a $10,000 camera. And in my head, you can't go on assignment with one camera. No. It's unprofessional. So that means you've got $20,000 worth of body alone just to cover your bases to go on an assignment. That's not realistic for 99% of the photographers working out there. They're not going to pay that kind of money.
And the other thing too, they have failure rates like everyone else. Like
Oh yeah.
my friends bought an SL2 and brand new. It he had to send it back. And you know what I told him? I said, well, I guess I could segue into this. So what happened I quit working for IBM. I picked up, so I needed to make some money quick. So I was picking up side work working on IBM machines of people that didn't have a service contract. So
Uh-huh.
I was making it was easy, quick money. I was in his architect's office and I had a portfolio of work I'd done of houses. And one of his assistants saw, he said, "Oh, you shot those?" I go, "Yeah, let me show my boss." That day, the guy hired me to shoot houses for him. So when I left IBM in '79, my salary was $1,300 a month, which was a lot of money in '79.
1,300 a month.
That's a lot of money because my
Yeah.
rent was 125 a month for a one-bedroom apartment with parking. And I was single, no girlfriend, no kids, no wife. An apartment full of film and
Yeah, that's
you know,
called photo bachelor.
yeah, it's a photo bachelor nerd.
Mistress photography.
Thank God I wasn't a playboy, then that I ended up being later on because oh my God, it would have been a disaster. Uh, anyway, I ended up working with this guy for almost a year, and I was making my monthly salary per week.
Wow.
Shoot, with 4x5 black and white film and color. And he it didn't occur to me, of course, that he didn't build every house in LA. I know I was going to run out of houses eventually, but it happened. So ended up with no work. I spent the money wisely. Took some unemployment. I got unemployment from IBM, so I got on that for a couple of months, and then there was an ad in the paper for Transamerica. We need someone with IBM Selectric experience. They paid very well.
What's Transamerica?
Transamerica Occidental Life. They,
Oh,
yeah, they was Occidental. They were the Pyramid Building in San
yeah.
Francisco.
Yep.
One here is downtown. So I took the interview, and I went in there. And I was on the 11th floor of this industrial shop. Went through all the office buildings. It was way up in the top floor, 11th floor. So I sat down with the guy that interviewed me. Been there for 35 years, and they had people that worked on calculators, people that worked on manual non-IBM typewriters, and they had two guys that were kind of trained on IBM Selectrics. IBM would train a company's guys in a 2-week class, which is like telling you, you're going to war. We're going to give you a 2-week crash
Yeah.
course in how to survive, and which means zip. Okay.
Yeah. Good luck.
We got trained. When we got trained at IBM, it was like special forces training.
That's what Kodak was too. Kodak was a year, 5 days a week for a year. I didn't have to do that, but everyone prior to me moved to Rochester 5 days a week, took your family, everything, put you in a house or apartment, and you like went to battle learning Kodak for an entire year.
Yeah. So we're like, went to work in a suit every day.
I was going to ask you about the interview. Are you rocking a suit? Are you rocking bell bottoms? Was there stripes or plaid happening? Because this is what, late 70s, early 80s.
Oh, it was 79. Oh, 79. Yeah, 1979.
I'm guessing questionable fashion at this interview.
I was sharp. Okay. No, there's no, I was one thing that I got to learn from my dad was you don't have to be good. You have to look good.
Yeah.
So
clothes make the man.
Yeah, that's right. And shoes. And in companies, you want to get a promotion, they look down at your shoes first.
Interesting.
They go right to your tie, right down to your shoes. And if those look kind of funky, you ain't going nowhere. So yeah, so we got beat up in training at IBM. There's nothing electronic in a Selectric typewriter. It's all mechanical. It's like a fine-made Swiss watch. It has transmissions, clutches, wires pulling stuff, one motor, and they trained us to literally, while I'm talking to you, I'm working on this thing. At the secretary's desk, you know. And we had psych training too, because half the time they call you, there's nothing wrong with the machine. They're just having a bad day and don't want to work. So you got to take that
Interesting.
call. And if they're on a
Y-
service contract, you got to take that call.
Well, you know what's interesting is this whole training ground here,
Yeah.
starting at IBM and then going into the houses and then going into this job. It's
Yeah.
kind of a perfect training ground for being a photographer because there's a
Yeah.
lot of psychology that goes on in photography. There's a lot of anthropology that goes on, and then there's a lot of like fast, rapid technical decisions that you have to make. So oddly enough, you came in from a bizarre angle here to photography, but it seems like a pretty good training ground.
I can't, like I said, IBM would have paid if I tried to get into like art center, it was full. IBM would have paid, they paid, my father was the kind of executive to where the company would have paid for the college education, you know,
Wow.
and I couldn't get in, you know, and so I just said, I'll teach myself, and now I'm seeing the young guys come up to me and, I get asked to mentor people and my advice to them, first thing I say to them is I ask them two questions. First thing is, do you have a job now? Yeah. I said, don't quit your job.
Yeah, smart.
Second thing, are you dating anybody? Yeah. Hold off on getting married.
Smart.
And then go to a city college, see what kind of photo classes they have and their reputation. Don't think about the big schools. Think about the small colleges with the teachers that know what they're doing and have worked out there. And then take some business classes so you can
Yeah,
manage your funds.
yeah, I
You
think business and I think assisting is another good
know?
way. Find somebody who's established, who's been out. I assisted for years, and for people that who were doing the kind of work I wanted to do, and then I assisted for people that were doing work that I had no interest in doing. And there's a benefit to all of those.
Yeah. So my thing was I never assisted anybody. Well, so I met a couple of guys and they liked my energy and everything. And I met these guys that got scared of me and my talent. They thought I was going to usurp them. So one minute they're like, "Come on in, man, everything's open, come next thing you know, they're like, um,
Yeah.
don't come today, that kind of thing. So I've learned something about mentors and my
Well,
attitude, my
yeah,
attitude, yeah,
that was the same thing that happened to me when you're assisting in a field where the photographer knows that you want to be in that field. It's a very delicate dance because here's the flip side of that people may not be thinking of. But if let's say that I work for Nat Geo and I
yeah,
know that Frank wants to be a Nat Geo photographer and I'm going on a Nat Geo assignment and he's going to assist for me and he's going to learn and watch what I'm doing and how I'm engaging with Nat Geo. And then, yes, one day he's going to say, I'm done assisting, and he's going to throw his hat in the ring of being a photographer, and he's going to go after Nat Geo.
yeah,
It's in my benefit to make sure that he is as prepared business-wise as possible so that he doesn't come into the field and say, I do the same thing that Dan does, but I'll do it for 10% to get in
yeah,
the door. You don't want that. So it's a weird catch-22 for people, and it takes the right kind of photographer with the right kind of confidence to say, I understand that you eventually are going to be a competitor of mine, but I want to make sure that you're prepared. And
yeah.
it's a fine line.
So my thing with that is, if you're gonna mentor someone, I'm like, I did this series called Pursuit of Balance, and one of the things was a picture of an old classroom that my stepmom was a head of nutrition. She was the head of nutrition department at college, and the words for that picture were, "A good teacher knows when to stop teaching." And so if you have someone that shows you they're brilliant, you help them fly higher, and you don't hold them back.
Yeah.
You need to leave me alone because you're better than me, and you've learned everything I can show you. Um, I've taken on a guy that decided he asked me, "Hey, I want you to mentor me," and this guy's I told you met Greg.
Oh, yeah.
Greg's he's no slouch.
No, he's good. He's a filmmaker too, like a
He's
legit filmmaker.
he's a filmmaker, and he's union. He's in the union.
Yeah,
So
no, he's real. He's the real deal.
so I told him, I said, so I told him, I said, he'll send me a picture and go, what do you think? I go, I hate you.
Yeah.
I go, I hate you. I said, I wished I'd taken that, I said, man, that's a hell of a shot, and I told him what I've shown him is, for me, everything I shoot, whether it's in a film or digital file, is shot in such a way that I'm going to print it. So I prepare my files to print. I produce files that it's going right to print. Boom, done. If you,
Not
yeah.
sure you got the memo, Frank, but we live in the digital era now. So why the hell would you be printing anything? And I print everything, so that's a loaded question. But why is that? Why do you still do that?
Because a real photograph is a print. It's not on a screen. I mean, you want to look at pictures on screens. The screens look nice and everything, but you can't evaluate your work unless you're looking at it on paper. Because it looks the same. If you go over here and look at the print, it's doesn't change. It you see, and you'll see something different every time in the print.
That sort of leads me to my next question. I had a question about your black and white, your pen and ink illustrations, and your prints and your journals, and that leads me to where, when we decided to do this interview, was probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, and you were on an artist in residence program on the East Coast, and I want to talk about the artist in residence program, the handmade books that you walked away from, but also touch on your illustrations and also why you make these prints and journal books. As a fellow journal maker, I've got a pretty good idea, but the audience is going to want to know. And then after that, I want to talk to you about jazz. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the image behind you right now. But let's go back to this artist in residence that you just came off of. What was that?
Man, it was a dream job that only I could have done with my set of skills. Because I danced between um, tabletop, ad work, fine art, just street. This job encompassed all of that. So I got called. So the guy that was the contact at California FRAM, he was Matt at AAA was liaised with Christopher West at the California FRAM. That job I did years ago. Christopher has a PhD now. He got elevated to Brown University, where he's
Ivy League.
Yeah. Oh, dude. Oh, man. You talk about hitting it.
Clearly, he's an educated man.
Oh, and smart, and smart in a way where you like that. It's not an asshole smart.
Yeah.
And so he is been consulting the Rhode Island Black Heritage Society about they finally got a building for all their artifacts.
Rhode Island Black Heritage Foundation.
Society.
Okay, yes. Got it.
And they have, and you want to talk about, I found out more history, wonderful history of ours. They have knowledge of history from the time of slavery during the Mayflower, when the Mayflower hit, because it's all through north, upper East Coast.
Sure.
Trickle down from there to the South and everywhere else. They've had stuff in warehouses all over the state. Now they have one building for all their stuff. And they have history of affluent Black people, educated Black folks.
And your role was to photograph the artifacts?
Yeah, they said, well, we're gonna have our show. We are gonna have our grand opening for the building. And we're talking to Christopher. Christopher told us about you. We've looked at your work, and we propose to fly you out for a 40-day art residency.
Whoa.
We want you to help us pick out 25 of our artifacts, photograph them only the way you can. And we want you to put on 4 different workshops on how you make the books. We want you to also make 25 custom books the way you make them for our high-end donors. And there's going to be an exhibition of your work and the stuff you shoot for us. And I
That's
said,
a lot.
so wait, so I thought about it. I said, first off, that can't be done, but if it's going to be done, I'm the only one that can do it. And so I said to her, I go, let me ask you something. First thing you need to know, I said, I need from you is, do you have an intimate relationship with a printer that can make prints on demand? And she goes, no. I said, then you need to buy a printer.
Yep.
And she goes, send me a link. They bought the printer. I got one behind me. The one here, they bought these. They're $1,300. It's an Epson P900. It makes museum photo quality prints.
Well, it's also nice to figure out very quickly their intention level, their seriousness level, by saying you need to buy this printer, and all of a sudden you get the bill of sale and you're like, oh, this is going to happen.
Oh, dude. Well, not only that, you need to buy a Carl hole punch to punch the books. Those are $200. Oh, we need a rototrim cutter. Those are $400. You need 3 sets of ink at $400 each, and paper. I said you need 10 boxes of 8.5, because the books are 8.5 by 11.
Okay.
So she bought just enough boxes of that, and too many boxes of 17 by 22.
That's my favorite size, because I put a 1620 on a 1722.
20 boxes of 17 by 22. But we
Can I have it?
Well,
I'm just kidding.
So you're gonna love this. So, and this is before we even signed the contract. And that was on the 9th of October. On the 10th of October, I got on an airplane and flew to Rhode Island. And the day I got there, and the stuff started coming from B&H. It landed there the day after I got there. I set the printer up. I'm using my own print program, Image Print, which helped me a lot. It just,
Oh yeah,
that dude, that program, oof.
What Frank's talking about, Image Print is like it's a native rip that you can control, that's superior to what comes with a Canon printer or Epson or HP printer. Image Print is like a much more sophisticated, refined version of that gives you a lot of control when it comes to making prints. And it's been around forever. I think I used to know the guy that founded that company, who was really good friends with Gorman and would hang out at Gorman's all the time. And I think if it's the same company I'm thinking of, but yeah, go ahead.
Color Bite. Anyway,
Color Bite.
So I got there, and they had been given a building by the state on one of the colleges, Rhode Island College, Rick. And in that town is Rhode Island School of Design and Brown University.
Oh, yeah. RISD.
Like 10 miles of each other. So
well, Frank, not to be fair, Rhode Island is like 12 miles across. So,
pretty much. Yeah,
it's all pretty much the same place.
Yeah. And I actually love the state a lot. I'm
Don't even think about it. You're not leaving LA.
Wait, you're gonna love this. So I get there, and the place has stuff everywhere. There's boxes. They pulled out a letter they got from Frederick Douglass.
Wow.
Yeah, they've got stuff like that. They mentioned to me, the woman that runs it, her husband descended from slaves, and they own a house in Newport that was built in 1870. And I ended up getting an invitation there. They really like me, so I got an invitation to the house. The collection at the house was insane. They have I'll show you, I'll send you, I think I sent you a picture of it. They have a slave kid's toy doll made out of Negro cloth.
What is that?
By law, if you were a slave, you could only wear Negro cloth. Negro cloth is like sandpaper.
Oh, like burlap or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're wearing that in the sun picking cotton. So this doll is, it's about 11 inches tall, and it's in great condition. So I had to go to the house and photograph that.
I was going to say that it must have ended up on the list.
Yeah, so for sure. And matter of fact, I made sure it's one of the prints in my book. This is if I can see this. This is a 8.5. This is one of the.
That's hard. There we go. No, there we go. Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
So
So
you got the punch and screws on top, and then it's inkjet prints with a vellum cover.
yeah, I've got the two vellum covers. I've got the rear is archival black mat board, quarter 20 stainless steel screws. There's 9 prints, 9 plates, and then one of my prints in the last one.
Question.
And, yeah.
So the museum has 24 of those and you have one?
But they have 25. I've got 26. Yeah.
So you just have one?
Yes.
Okay.
I made myself one, yeah. And somebody told me if you're gonna make artist proofs, you make 3. And I'm like, if I need to make another, I can make another if I have to. But this one's enough for now. I made mine on their hot press bright matte paper.
Who makes the paper?
It's Epson. It's Epson's
Epson.
exhibition
Okay.
paper. So it looks just like it was made on multi-grade matte from a wet print. That's exactly what it looks like because it's got rich, deep blacks.
Got to have good blacks.
Yeah, you have to. There's only.
I print on a paper that has been discontinued for a decade. It's a 300-pound. I want to say it was branded under Canon, but it was not a Canon paper, and it looks like a wet darkroom print. It's the closest thing. And I'm literally, my camera right now in this laptop is propped up on a Canon Pro 1000 printer that I haven't used in 2 years. So, but I get where you're going. It's a gorgeous look. And so 40 days. Did they put you up in a hotel? Was there a residency location?
So there was a residency location on the college. So I was in this, actually they put visiting professors in these rooms.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, oh yeah, man, wow. It had a little kitchen, a microwave, and it had very comfortable two twin beds. It had a TV, a desk, Wi-Fi.
And that's like, you're basically on a 40-day assignment, which is incredibly hard to get now. In fact, that's almost impossible as a photographer to get a 40-day assignment for anything. And so it's technically an artist in residence, but in essence, you're there to produce. You got a lot of work to do. And 40 days seems like a long time. It's not. So how was the pressure at the end of this thing?
You know what, dude? I was aware of it, but my attitude was, I'm doing this. This is getting done. They're gonna love me. When I'm done with this, they're gonna be like, wow, matter of fact, they want me to come back in the spring.
Okay, I was going to ask. So overall, they were pleased.
Yes, because the exhibition, I had to print I printed 6 of mine at 17 by 22, and I printed 20 of theirs.
Did they frame them?
Yes, got them framed. They had to paint. They had to put walls up inside the main room to slick up the building because it wasn't the architect hadn't finished doing anything yet.
Yep.
So it was a hit. It was a big hit. And my attitude was I left on the 17th in the morning to fly to Selma for the photo festival, but I said on the 15th, the day before the reception, I want to make sure my part's done. And the books were done, they're signed, ready to go.
And what about the spring?
Huh?
They want you back in the spring?
Yes. Yeah.
That's a good sign.
Hey man, I'm happy. I like the work. It validates me still,
Well, in a little East Coast time, a little urban, like edgy. RISD's got that area around RISD's kind of edgy. You could make some cool stuff over there.
I was out shooting at night and got some nice stuff there, and the food there is pretty damn good.
It is good.
The food is good there in that state, and people are very friendly.
So speaking of friendly and Rhode Island and states, I want to transition to jazz. Because see how I did that? Rhode Island, friendly people, and straight to jazz. So I love jazz. You love jazz. Your photography has a direct connection to jazz, and you've got jazz prints on the wall of your house. Because when I did an interview with you years ago in LA, and walked in and saw these amazing prints. Give us a little bit of this jazz history here?
My father played, and he had some music, and he had some jazz stuff in the house. He played piano, more church stuff than anything else. But he had Nancy Wilson and who was it? A couple of keyboard players that were famous back then. Uh, but I just and then when I was in elementary school, like in the sixth grade, we moved to Sacramento, and two of my friends that I made in school, one of them's name was Henry Robinette, who's direct cousin to Charlie Mingus.
Oh man.
Looks just like Mingus.
Boom.
Is now a professor of he plays jazz guitar, and we still talk. He's well known in that area. He's also kind of well known in the jazz world. Um, the first time he played Miles Davis Kind of Blue.
My all-time favorite album.
That is the quintessential.
Yep.
That is, you listen to that, there's not one bad track on that album.
I have listened to that more. That literally is the number one album in my entire life. The number of times I played that, and I remember exactly where I was when I first heard it. Not even what city, what apartment. I remember where I was in the room when I first heard that album. Paris, by the way.
For music, music is feeling and tone, and photography is feeling and tone and light. It's lyrical. Photography is very lyrical. For me, it's all about light and shadow. I did 4 workshops there too, by the way.
Oh yeah, while you were on your
yes.
hiatus in Rhode Island.
4 workshops, and
God, that's a lot.
Yeah, and they paid me very well, and I came to the conclusion. I told Chris, we were talking the other day on the phone, and I said, if they have me back, I'm going to ask for more money. I said, not because it's because of the money, but because of what I bring to the table. They paid me well.
Yeah, I mean, look, let me just say this to the audience that I think most of us out there are pretty aware of this. But when it comes to teaching, there's photographers come in different flavors. You have people that come and bring everything, and you have people who come and bring nothing, and they bring nothing because they're well known and they kind of feel like, well, it's a privilege for you to spend a few days with me. Don't take those workshops. What you want to take is a workshop from someone who is going to bring everything, and to use a football analogy, they're going to leave a little bit on the field. Like you want somebody that's coming in saying, look, I take this seriously. So like when you said you're going to teach 4 workshops, in my head, because I teach all the time, I'm like, that in itself over a 40-day period is enough to like crush most people. So that's a lot. Yeah. So I mean, it's not like you're asking for more money because you're greedy. It's asking for more money because of the amount of work that you're putting into it.
Yeah, and it was funny because the first one was a female class, Black Americana Studies, and they said, we want you to show these girls what it was like to pose back in before 1910. Oh, I can do that. So I went online and I found the little posing things. I downloaded those pictures, and I set up a studio. I mean, I actually ordered all this stuff because I knew I was going to have to do it. They paid for a pop-up background. They had antique furniture.
How about the brace? Did they have to wear the brace so they wouldn't move during
I
the
didn't have to
exposure?
put that on. That would have been that. Number one, I don't want to get into any sexual harassment things. So
probably a good idea.
I'm not putting my hands on any of these girls, no. But I said the reason that everybody looks so stiff in their pictures is because they're in a brace.
Yeah.
And I said, you see one person, everyone's sharp, and then one person's a blur. They sneezed. And guess what? The photographer goes, oh, you sneeze, you got to pay for another negative. You want me to do this? Otherwise, it's just tough.
Yeah.
And so I took, I put the camera on manual, and I did portraits. I got 2 girls sit together, did portraits of them. And then I made sure by the next day they got emailed to them black and white, old school looking pictures. They loved it. So I did I do a thing where I show black and white, no, color to black and white on a keynote. There's a cinema class that came in, and I showed them this, you know about this book, the See For Yourself book.
Yep.
I'm still working on this, this is from 2015 till just, to keep adding to it. I showed them why. I said, you need to get a blank journal and fill it with stuff and not just pictures, doodle in it. Say you went to a movie and you liked the movie, bring the sticker stuff and glue that in there, you know?
Yeah, it's a free zone to do whatever you want creatively.
Steal hair from your girlfriend or your sister and tape it in there or something. But, don't make it all about photography. You can't draw in it, date it and
Oh
draw.
yeah. I mean, I'm a big journal guy, and I do paintings and drawings that are horrible, that just don't work. But occasionally you get a base hit, you get on base with something, and you're like, all right, it's just enough to keep you going.
Yeah.
But Frank, we're getting close to the end of our hour here, and there's a picture behind you that I want to talk about. And you said something about it at the very beginning before I was recording, and to me it was a monumentally important thing in both your life, but in context to American culture. So I want to end with this. And tell us about what's behind you.
This is the last picture. So Farrakhan made this call. He made this call, and everybody thought it was, that's cute. I want 1 million men to show up in Washington, D.C. We need to have 1 million man march to show solidarity for our people. And, nobody took him serious. Next thing you know, people start showing up.
Yeah.
And so all my friends, all my progressive Black friends, I'm going to show up for the call. And I'm like, I'm not going. I'm not, I got so I ended up where I ended up going. And I went 2 days early. We had to line up to get press credentials because I thought I needed them. So I was in line for 2 days and didn't get any press credentials, and then realized I didn't need them. I said, they're not going to kick anybody out with a camera. They want the media to get these pictures.
Sure.
So what happened was when people started showing up, all the major Black stars start getting involved. So they wanted to be seen there. And I said, you know what? I'm not shooting anybody on stage. I'm going to shoot the people. And back then I was all Hasselblad. I had a manual Hasselblad, and I had the electric Hasselblad, and I had 5 lenses, and I had it all on my back. And so I got at the front of the stage, turned around, and walked and shot my way all the way to Lincoln's monument on the mall, and I shot all under the trees. And I got to the front. This picture, as I turned, I saw this. He was one of the Fruit of Islam guards, and the history of Fruit of Islam. Yeah, go ahead.
So do me a favor, lean all the way to the right for 5 seconds. Keep going. I want you to disappear. So keep going. I want everybody. That's good. I want everybody to see this picture for 5 seconds, so we get the whole pic here.
All right.
And okay, come back.
All right. So it's a square. So it's a square image because it's Hasselblad. You can see him full length. Fruit of Islam guards are security, private security you can hire. They're all ex-cons, so they don't have guns. And if there's a function you're having, you can hire them, and they have a stellar record. Gangs don't mess with them. People respect them. They're the nicest guys in the world. So this guy was a young Fruit of Islam guard, and I pointed my camera at him, and he got ready to push back at me, and then he realized he couldn't. So he relaxed. He visibly relaxed, and he posed, and I snapped it. And it took that one shot and I turned around on the left. And I call this one man, 1 in a million. And
what's he looking at?
He's looking at his life, probably. He just relaxed, This was and I got this warm, wonderful feeling. And I suddenly realized, wow, this is the first time I've ever felt like an equal in America, where someone wasn't looking at me questioning if I'm going to rob them or take their purse or that kind of madness, because that kind of stuff still goes on. And I'm so glad I went. I'll never forget that day. It was life changing.
Yeah,
And
that's a big one.
I got some negative. I got negatives I need to scan. I've got a whole stack of negatives from that. They're all square, because I shot all medium format. I got some outrageous shots. Yeah, I'm so glad I went. The
Well,
the the other people talk about critical race theory, and I crack up laughing because you can't call what happened in America to us a theory. Truth is not a theory. It's kind of, you either tell the truth or hopefully you put it in school books, which doesn't happen. But I'm finding out more now in this third quarter of my life than I knew ever. It's kind of I guess the best way to put it is liberating.
well, look, that moment, that day clearly was, if you were making a timeline of your life and you have peaks and troughs and peaks and troughs, that's a peak. I think your time at IBM was a peak. It was a different peak, but it's a peak. I think the time your parents obviously instilled in you good things, I think that's the peak. I think Charlie Mingus's friend in elementary school is a peak. It would be interesting to see you put together a project of these peak moments in your life, and that to me was, like you said, you think you're in the third quarter of your life, but you're starting fast out of the third quarter, and it's good. You're out there constantly producing work. You just came off your 40-day stint in Rhode Island. This is no time to waste, and you're not wasting it.
Robert Frost's poem, Into the Woods, I guess, or whatever, the line in there, the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I've got promises to keep. And the last line is, and miles to go before I sleep. And I wrote
That's my mom's favorite poet.
That poem is just, I wrote this poem and the last line is, go and take the long way home. So that's what it is for me. Go and take the long way home. And no thinking aloud. You think about what you want to do, and then you stop thinking and you execute and make prints.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to leave it. Yeah. I think that's the biggest takeaway, which is to go, at some point you have to stop thinking and execute. And I agree with that 100%. And I also agree with the fact that you're a nice guy for doing this. I check in with you periodically. Last time was around you were in the inaugural issue of AG23 with your cup, and I was showing someone AG23 a couple, like last week, and he just very quickly flipped through the first issue and landed on your thing, and he goes, "Oh, Frank Jackson." I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh yeah, I know Frank." I said, "Yep, he's out there." So first of all, this isn't really an interview, it's just a conversation, but I appreciate you doing this. I think you're a very interesting person who doesn't quite fit into the model of most of the photographers that I encounter. And I think, I love the fact that you're a thinker. I love that you have interests outside of that. We didn't even get to talk about raw lacquer titanium Bromptons, which, that could be a whole nother talk.
Have you seen the new one?
I don't even want to see the new ones. I just, I'll tell you when I'm done recording here. I have a bike story to tell you.
That would be my Leica, the new titanium one.
Yeah.
They improved it.
Oh yeah. It's way lighter and it's also way more expensive, just like the Leica. So
it's got four gears. Oh.
So I'm going to end this sucker right now. Thank you so much. We'll come back and do this again in the next year, just to check in and see what's going on. Maybe we'll even do an East Coast installment because I'll be back there over the summer. So who knows? Maybe we'll be in the same spot. But I'm going to end this recording now. Thank you so much, but don't go anywhere.
All right.
We're sorry. The number you have reached is not in service. Please check the number or try your call again. This is a recording.